Rough weather plays a major role in the damage and loss of shipping containers every year. But it's not the only reason for the loss of goods at sea. Other major factors causing loss are bad stowage, improper supervision, and incorrect handling of these ships. On the show today, we tell you what are the big risks that container ships face, and what happens if there's even a little negligence aboard these marine vessels. Towering cranes, docking container ships, and unloading countless supplies that keep the world economy afloat. These are the visuals of ports from different parts of the world. The global shipping network is keeping food, energy, and consumer goods circulating. In fact, these containers bring us possibly everything. From those tablets and phones to our clothes and food, from toys and souvenirs to automobiles. Over the past decade, the number of container ships in the global fleet has increased from 4,966 ships in 2011 to 5,371 ships in 2020. General cargo ships account for nearly 30% of the world merchant fleet. This share took a hit briefly though during the coronavirus pandemic. It created gridlock in global shipping initially, but with the surge of e-commerce, there has been an increase in the urgency for shipping lines to deliver products as quickly as possible. As the world now opens up, demand for goods have risen exponentially. The ships have grown bigger and are sailing with full capacity. And that's where the major risks lie. Many of these goods getting transported are toppling over at an alarming rate, sending millions of dollars worth of cargo to the bottom of the ocean. The pressure to speed up deliveries have given rise to the risk of safety errors. The shipping industry is seeing the biggest spike in lost containers in 7 years. More than 3,000 boxes have been dropped into the sea last year, and more than 1,000 have fallen overboard so far in 2021. The accidents are disrupting supply chains for hundreds of retailers and manufacturers across the globe. Let's take a look at some of the worst container ship disasters in the world. This is MV Express Pearl, a container ship of Singapore that was carrying cosmetics and chemicals including 25 tons of nitric acid. On May 21st, the vessel was anchored off Colombo in Sri Lanka when it caught fire. The cargo ship had left the Hazira port of Gujarat in India on May 15th and was on its way to Singapore via Colombo. The fire engulfed the entire vessel, destroying 70 to 80% of the containers on board. It took 6 days for Sri Lanka to douse the fire with the help of the Indian Coast Guard. A military helicopter was used to drop dry chemical powder to extinguish the fire, whereas Sri Lankan and Indian Coast Guard boats sprayed the ship with seawater. All 25 crew were evacuated safely. 2 of them suffered burns. But the greater damage was done offshore. Tons of microplastic granules from its cargo have flooded Sri Lanka's beaches, forcing a fishing ban and sparking fears of ecological devastation. The ship has now sank, heightening fears of an oil and chemical spill. Sri Lanka called it the island's worst ever marine ecological disaster. Hundreds of soldiers were deployed in a major cleanup operation of dozens of miles of beach. The Marine Environment Protection Authority lodged a complaint with the police to take legal action against the captain of the ship, MV Express Pearl. Made in China, the ship was just 3 months old and had previously visited Qatar and Dubai and was due to go to Malaysia and Singapore after calling at Colombo. So what went wrong aboard this brand new ship? Authorities believe that the captain of the vessel knew about a nitric acid leak on May 11th, long before the vessel entered Sri Lankan waters. Initially, the ship's operators said that they had made attempts to leave the leaking container in India and Qatar, but failed to do so after both countries rejected requests as they did not have special storage facilities. But the parent company of MV Express Pearl has denied such claims and said the ship had undergone discharge and loading operations in both countries before continuing on its scheduled journey to Colombo. Meanwhile, the executive chairman of the company, Tim Hartnell, has hinted at poor packaging as the cause of the acid leak, which the ship officials had detected before reaching Sri Lanka. The 25-member crew have now completed their quarantine period and are under an investigation. It was just last year that the island republic witnessed another disaster at sea. In September 2020, a Greek oil tanker caught fire off Sri Lanka's east coast after an engine room explosion which killed 1 crew member. The fire on the new diamond tanker took more than a week to put out and left a 40-kilometer-long oil spill. Sri Lanka has demanded that the owners pay the $17 million cleanup bill. Suez Canal, a 193-kilometer artificial waterway. The canal has been the potential flashpoint for geopolitical conflict since it opened in 1869. It is the first canal that directly links the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It took 10 years and 1.5 million workers to build the waterway in the 19th century. So that one day, one giant ship could clog it. The vessel has been refloated, but the disruption lingers on. One of the largest cargo ships in the world, Ever Given, ran aground the canal on March 23rd and halted the canal's traffic for 6 days. The 400-meter-long wedged vessel weighed 200,000 tons, with a maximum capacity of 20,000 containers. Ever Given was carrying 18,300 containers when it got stuck. Operated by the Taiwanese company Evergreen Marine Corporation, the ship was on its way from Malaysia to the Netherlands. But how did this incident take place? The primary causes were high winds and a sandstorm that reduced visibility and rendered the ship incapable of keeping a straight course. Later, Egyptian authorities said that technical or human errors may have also been involved. Now, the Suez Canal Authority has blamed the ship's grounding on its speed.
Based on the size of the ship, we demand that a tugboat or two accompany it until it leaves the second canal. But in the situation we were in, it was very difficult for the tugboats to do anything. Firstly, the captain entered in a very wrong direction using the rudder. He very much misused the rudder. He entered with great speed, so these tugboats couldn't have done anything with that great speed that he was going in with. That speed, by the way, is against the rules and regulations of moving in narrow lanes like the Suez Canal. It has a specific speed. It shouldn't exceed 8 or 9 kilometers per hour. He went in with about 25 kilometers per hour.
For days it was lodged diagonally on one of the world's key shipping lanes, causing traffic to build up and other ships to be rerouted. The canal obstruction had a significant negative impact on trade between Europe and Asia and the Middle East. By the 28th of March, at least 369 ships were queuing to pass through the canal. Smith Salvage and Boskalis, two Dutch companies, were roped in for the rescue mission. Operations involving tugboats and dredging were put into action. Alongside the tugs, dredgers too began digging out sand and mud from under the bow of the vessel. 14 tugboats pulled and pushed the Ever Given at high tide to try to dislodge it and were able to move the ship 30 degrees from left and right. And then in the wee hours of March 29th, the vessel was fully refloated. Traffic resumed after a gap of nearly a week. Tugboats honked in celebration, and hundreds of waiting ships finally passed through one of the world's busiest trade routes. It's been 2 months since the Suez Canal blockage happened, but its impact continues to worry the shipping trade as a severe shortage of containers have pushed freight rates to an all-time high in key markets like the US and Europe. The cost of blocking shipping for almost a week apparently comes for more than $54 billion. The canal's revenues took a $14 to $15 million hit for every day of the blockage. The Suez Canal handles about 10% of the global maritime commercial traffic, about 12% of global trade, around 1 million barrels of oil and roughly 8% of liquefied natural gas pass through the canal each day. The Ever Given is now being held by the Suez Canal Authority, which demands it must be paid $550 million for salvage costs and damages. An Egyptian court has ruled that the Suez Canal Authority has a right to arrest the vessel until it is paid. The SCA says that the sum helps cover the revenue lost during the canal blockage, the cost of the rescue mission, and a fee for the damage sustained by the canal's embankments when the ship became lodged in them. After the incident, the Egyptian government is planning to widen the narrower parts of the canal. Smith Salvage, that completed the mammoth task of freeing the Ever Given container ship, got another distress call just a week later. On April 5th at 10 a.m., an emergency call was sent out by a Dutch cargo ship stranded in the North Sea. This is Eemslift Hendrika. By April 6th, this ship was abandoned in the North Sea, 110 kilometers west of Ålesund, Norway, after cargo shifted and the vessel took a list in a gale. The stormy weather displaced some of its cargo. The Eemslift Hendrika was adrift in the Norwegian Sea after it was evacuated in a dramatic manner in rough waters. 12 crew members were evacuated in 2 stages by the Norwegian rescue services. The first 8 were airlifted from the deck of the cargo ship, while the last 4 had to jump into the sea. The Norwegian Coastal Administration's priority was to try to stabilize it so that it does not sink, else it would have leaked oil into the sea. The cargo ship contained 350 cubic meters of heavy fuel oil, 75 cubic meters of diesel, and 10 cubic meters of lubricating oil. By the 9th of April, the cargo ship was towed to Breisundet, close to the town of Ålesund. According to an initial investigation by the Dutch Safety Board, the Eems Lift Hendrika was transporting several smaller boats as well as thrusters in its hold. During the storm, it caused holes in 2 of the ship's ballast tanks, with 1 tank punctured in several places. The damage led to water entering the ship's hold. The Norway rescue mission reminded us of the MSC Napoli 2007 incident when a British cargo ship got entangled in a storm in the English Channel. In January that year, the 275-meter freighter developed a crack and got flooded after running into heavy weather on a voyage from Belgium to Portugal. The Royal Navy jumped in to rescue all 26 crew members before leaving the Napoli adrift off Cornwall, England. Fearing that the ship could break up and sink, it was intentionally beached in the Lyme Bay off the coast of Branscombe. After removing fuel and cargo, salvage crews tried to refloat the Napoli on July 9, 2007, but seeing its poor condition, the officials took a call to re-beach the vessel. Explosives were used to break the wreck into 3 sections. Each part was later removed individually. The salvage of the MSC Napoli took a whopping 924 days to complete. These extreme weather conditions can sink ships, topple goods, and even overthrow cars into the ocean. One may have less control over these natural causes and have to rely on rescue missions to lessen the damage. But what about the incidents that could have been entirely avoided, like the next one? October 5th, 2011. The Liberian-flagged MV Rena hit a reef off the North Island, New Zealand. Hundreds of tons of fuel oil leaked out, causing widespread pollution. The oil polluted beaches and killed wildlife, including thousands of seabirds, as it leaked from the ship aground on the Astrolabe Reef. Over a span of several months, the ship was battered by constant heavy winds and rough seas. And then, on the 8th of January 2012, the Rena broke into 2 after a particularly harsh night of bad weather. Spilling some 300 containers and debris into the water. By the 10th of January, the stern section had slipped off the reef bank and sunk almost completely. An interim report by the New Zealand Transport Accident Investigation Commission stated that the accident occurred as the crew took shortcuts to meet a deadline to reach a port. The ship's owner, Dyna Shipping, a subsidiary of Greek shipping giant Costamare, was also charged over the discharge of harmful substances. New Zealand's government estimated the cost of the cleanup at 130 million New Zealand dollars. But that's not the only big oil disaster caused by a container ship. How can we not talk about this one? On July 25th last year, cargo ship MV Wakashio ran aground on a coral reef in the southeastern tip of Mauritius in the South Indian Ocean. The Japanese-owned oil tanker was carrying nearly 4,000 metric tons of oil, and it unleashed a vast oil spill. The ship's captain, a 58-year-old Indian national named Sunil Kumar Nandeshwar, and deputy captain were arrested on 18th August on suspicion of negligence in operating the vessel. According to investigators, the crew had been celebrating the birthday of a sailor on board the ship at the time of the grounding. The stricken oil tanker had sailed near shore for a Wi-Fi signal. This was confirmed during the investigation. The captain of the ship said, and we quote, "There was no internet on the ship, and I agreed to dock in Mauritius so that the crew members could communicate with their relatives, as it keeps the morale of the crew high." Investigators also revealed that the ship had failed to respond to warnings of it being on an errant course. As heartbreaking scenes emerged, Mauritius declared a state of environmental emergency. Unlike previous offshore spills, this incident took place near environmentally protected marine ecosystems of international importance. It took more than 5 months for cleanup operations, but its effects can be seen even now. At the beginning of the show, we showed you a glimpse of the MOL Comfort disaster of 2013, the biggest cargo lost ever in history. That incident led to the adoption of new rules for weighing all cargo ships, but even after the new guidelines came into effect, various accidents and incidents of negligence continue to occur at sea. Be it the Mauritius oil spill or one Apus stack collapse, and even the Beirut port blast in which 2,750 tons of explosive substance abandoned by a cargo ship 7 years ago rocked the country, 2020 was the year that highlighted the lax attitude of key players in the shipping industry. Experts have called for self-reflection by the stakeholders, including supporting the calls for increased shipping industry financial responsibility when it comes to disaster response and cleanup. The situation has now become critical because of pressure on supply chains since the pandemic. Improved planning of the journey and following proper rules around stacking can help save the future course of these giant vessels. A thorough review of how goods are loaded and stored needs to be done too. Remember, even a small act of negligence can undo the most meticulously planned shipment, ultimately putting our planet at risk.